It's Thursday, it's noon. Welcome to Disruptive Conversations. And today my guest is going to be Sarah Colvin. So happy that you're here. Okay, people are getting to know. Hi. Thanks so much for joining us. Hello, everyone. It's time for Disruptive Conversations. We've got a great guest on today, and we're going to be learning about how we develop skill sets, what that looks like, and how we're able to transfer those skill sets into our next phase, our new chapter, our next moment of work. I'm waiting for Sarah to come on, and we are just going to have an extraordinary time together. If your friends don't know about this, please take a moment, let them know to come and to join. If you haven't followed me yet, please do. I drop important information all the time about how we make change, embrace change, what are barriers to change, and how to get through that. Now, Sarah has already joined us, and we're just going to wait for her to, she sent a request, and we're going to be going live. And my goodness, doing great today. Thank you, Nico, Danielle. Thank you, DR George. Thank you. Waiting for Sarah to come up. I'm not seeing her quite yet, but I'm sure she's going to be on here just momentarily. And here she comes. We're going to buffer for a moment, waiting for this. Okay. All right. And Free Skills Shop, thank you for joining. And if anybody wants to drop where they're coming in from, that would be also great. Waiting for Sarah to come on. Sarah has a really interesting background, and for those of you who feel that, I've had a particular Free Skills Shop, if you feel like you've developed certain difficulties, here we go. We're going to accept. Okay, here's Sarah. We're accepting. And let's give this a try. We're going to get there.
We made it.
Oh my goodness. We sure did. So Sarah, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the show. And so welcome everyone to Disruptive Conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, influencers, authors, educators, in which we deep dive into the experiences these women have needed to navigate and conquer in order to achieve the personal and professional success that they have at this point in time. I'm Dr. RYGER, clinical psychologist, and I am an expert in change. I help people make positive change at any point in time. And you can't have positive change without disruption. You need to disrupt a thought, a feeling, a belief, a behavior in order to create your 10.0 life. And that's what this series of conversations is all about. And today I am beyond thrilled to have Sarah Colvin join us. And briefly, one of the things that I love about my guests is that they are so extraordinarily accomplished, and they've done so many different things that I need to actually read from their bio to get this together. So Sarah began her career in investor relations and business development for alternative asset management firms in 2006. And she worked with early stage asset managers across all kinds of classes. She transitioned from business development to corporate development. And then she formally launched EPL Advisors, where she developed her own framework, Go Sarah, for building businesses. Her clients have included quantitative, long-only equity asset management firm. Listen to this one, a molecular chemist and green hydrogen process inventor, for whom she developed a $4 billion customer pipeline in under a year. So we're talking get there, drive. Okay, so keep in mind everything I've said until this moment about Sarah. And Sarah was a professional singer training in opera. And she took her opera career and made this extraordinary shift. So without further ado, Sarah, thank you so much for being here. And of all the things I've said about you, what is it that you would like to add, if anything?
This is my first Instagram Live, and it's really fun. So far, so good. No, I'm thrilled to be here, and I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to speak with your followers and to talk about the things that are so important to women in business and to women in general as we build ourselves. And that is a process that occurs every single day. It never stops. We are constantly in the world of meeting people and finding our way through all of the things that we have to find our way through in order to find who we are in the end. So thrilled to be here, thrilled to have a conversation with you and with your guests, and thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So Sarah, what is it that you needed to disrupt inside of yourself in order to have the professional and personal success you have at this point in time? Because obviously there is more to come.
I would say the biggest thing that I think about all the time is that I had to stop asking people for permission to be my best self. And I came from a world in music where you worked really hard and you worked every day, and you practiced all the time, and you were isolated in many cases as a musician when you practice, because you're in a practice room, for hours on end by yourself, learning your repertoire and, doing the things that you need to do to be proficient in not only the music, but as a singer, to train your body to make the sounds that it makes and to do those things. And there's a discipline in that I don't know that I learned that it was a discipline when I was young, because it was just what I did. But when I came out into the world and I started working in finance, and that was really an accident more than anything, it was just that was the job that I chose. When I was offered jobs to make a living in New York City. And when I came out into that world, I thought, oh gosh, I'm never going to really be able to keep up, and I have to fake it, right? I have to fake this. I have to, nobody needs to know that this isn't where I came from. And so I started by learning the lexicon of the business. And then I started, sort of pushing forward and working through, like, how do I ascribe the same discipline to this new life that I have? And I think that I was always asking people for permission to sort of step forward and to excel and to achieve. And I don't know that I really stopped asking for permission until I was in my 40s. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to ask for permission to live my life and to help people do better and to raise money and to help build businesses and to share what I've learned and to share my wisdom with the world. And that has been an ongoing battle. And I fight it every day. I wake up and I say, well, I don't need to ask permission to live this day, and that's it. So that's what I do to disrupt, but I still do it every day. I'm not perfect at it yet.
Well, I think, just taking a page here, that part of what happens, and historically in the socialization of women, is that we need to, like, we do something and we kind of like look at out of the side of our eye, or even turn our heads to look for that approval. And as we do that, it really takes us away like our own inner stamp of okay doesn't get built.
I would agree with that, right? It's knowing where true north might be, right? And just saying, you know what, I'm okay with this, or I'm comfortable with this. And that really is important when you sort of break that down, or sort of, we talk about moving to the root of that problem, right? Or what's the root cause of finding that okay, or looking for that okay from other people, from the outside world. For me, I found that, like, things like my salary didn't value my intelligence, or that I didn't value myself in the roles that I was in the way that I should have potentially, or that I didn't speak up when I needed to speak up, or I didn't push forward when I needed to push forward. And I was young, I was in my 20s. And, a decade later, I find that I watch women do that now, and I push for them, right? So when I'm in a room with a woman who is young and just starting her career, and something occurs where she's devalued among her peers in the room and they don't even know they're doing it, I might step up and say, wait, that's not your role. Or we need to treat her with more respect or more dignity, or we need to show her a better way, that she doesn't need to seek approval. She doesn't need to seek this kind of approval. She needs to be able to do the thing that she does, right? There's a lot in what you said about sort of like looking to your right and looking to your left and seeking approval. And I don't know that it's necessary. Maybe that's age, maybe that's wisdom, maybe that's just too much has happened in life, right? You just say, this isn't necessary anymore. And you shed it or you walk away from it. And I find that serves me best, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. And it's part of the, I guess, the development. I love having conversations because you think about new things all the time, of really building that internal approval stamp that you can give yourself, which also takes into account that I am enough. And when we say I am enough, it doesn't mean that, oh, well, I'm enough, I know everything. It doesn't mean that. I am enough means that I've got foundation, and I see what I'm doing, and I am going to go forward, and I'm going to learn, hopefully, every single day.
Yep. And that you can accept the things that you thought were wrong with you, right? And that acceptance, I mean, we talked about that in our first conversation, about this idea of accepting, all of yourself and all of the things that have happened to you in your life, or all of the things that you perhaps, were fractures or were fault lines in your own personal story, and not rejecting them, but accepting them as, you are the confluence of all of the events that have occurred in your life. And you can use all of that to move yourself into a direction that is positive and perhaps, evocative, and, that really does help other people in the world while you're helping yourself. And that it doesn't have to be about, what's in it for me. It can be about what's in it for everyone, and how do I take people on that journey with me.
I couldn't have asked for a better segue. So the question I have is, you went from opera singer into finance. And so where a lot of people stumble is that they don't realize, appreciate, and give value to, I have a great manicure. I'm like so excited. Good. It generally doesn't happen. But that, you don't adequately value the skills that you've developed along the way, and say, well, I was a singer, so like, okay, but now I have to develop all of these skills. Well, you may need to develop a lot of knowledge, but how did you recognize what the skills that you had that were actually transferable and giving them value?
Gosh, I was really young, and I knew how to perform, and I knew how to learn. And I think that being a musician, you just learn how to learn very early on in your life, because so much of that is done, once you know the notes, right, then you have to infer the language of music. And once you know how all of that works, for me, it was just learning a new language is really what happens when I learn a new field. The transferable skill is knowing how to put together the pieces, right? And so it's having the foundational tool of learning, and then having the hunger to just learn anything and to throw yourself into it. And so whether it be with hedge fund managers or venture capital firms or with private equity fund managers, it's knowing, one, how to speak the language, and two, how everything in their business is constructed, right? And learning that construct is like, and learning the rules and how people, move about those businesses together in tandem to create value for other people. Well, that's one thing. And then learning, I would say, the underlying investment adjustments that people are making, and learning how those things work. I mean, I'm not a chemist, but I was able to understand, you know, this new technology in green hydrogen after, you know, 6 months of working with the chemists that invented it, and really throwing myself in and finding from the very root of what they were doing and pulling forward and creating language around it that made sense to others. And the most transferable skill I think that I have is that I understand complex concepts very quickly, and that I'm able to articulate what those concepts are with people in a way that makes them marketable, and in a way that makes them understandable to people who may not understand, you know, or may not need to understand everything that those concepts entail. But to be able to talk about a molecule in a way that makes it marketable, or to be able to talk about a new technology and network systems that make them marketable, or to be able to understand behavioral science and behavioral analysis and, you know, fund management that makes it marketable, and to be able to know what's important in those areas. And so I don't know that there's a skill that I can point to and say, as an opera singer, I learned this and therefore I know these things. I think that it's more of an intuitive kind of thing that you learn, because when you're performing on stage, you have, you know, you're speaking a language with people who are around you. And this again is just, it's another form of language. It's another form of, you know, sort of integrating yourself into, you know, the orchestra and finding your way. Does that make sense? Maybe it doesn't make sense.
You know, it does make sense. And what, you know, as an opera singer, oftentimes you're singing in a language that other people don't know. And so what is so important is making connection and finding that space of communication and making connection and being and having a presence, a physical presence. And so when you walk in a room, those are skill sets that perhaps,
I don't think about,
you know, you don't
ever,
really
think
about.
It
It's
time.
not like, well, I've
like,
taken,
oh, there she is.
Right.
I'm like, oh, it's just me.
Like, you don't think about, you know, I know how to do, I don't know, some tech thing or whatever, but that you're coming in, you are coming in with a skill set. And that oftentimes, I mean, look, we need to know our stuff. We need to know our facts. We need to be experts in our information. In addition to that, it's how all of that gets communicated so that people understand, can hear, and just vibe from you. And we have those things called mirror neurons, which are kind of like a little BS meter that we have of, is this sounding truthful, or is this sounding like, not so sure about that little wonky disconnect in your brain. And that those are all things that you learned and embodied and practiced as a singer going out on that stage.
That's absolutely right. And that intuition, right? That thing in your gut, right? That mirror neuron that you talk about is really what drives our intuition. And you have to tap into that, right? Like you have to really, like, you have to trust that. Sometimes that lens can change, right? Like my lens into that information might be different from your lens into that information, right? Like we're all informed by the things that have happened in our lives, and some of us who might have anxiety or trauma or depression or any of those other kinds of things, that lens may be colored in a different way. And so I think sometimes, you know, we have to check ourselves, and we have to make sure that we're focusing on the right thing. But I mean, I don't know how you do that. I know how I do that, right? I think we all do it differently. But sometimes, you know, the interruptions in life or the trauma that we've experienced, and I had significant trauma early in life, and I think that sometimes informs me in the way that I make decisions. But I think that sometimes it also helps me in the way that I make decisions. You know, and so accepting that and sort of using that as my superpower, and knowing that when something's off, I really know it's off because of what I've experienced. And so I think that maybe sometimes we have to listen a little bit more when we're thinking about those things too.
Absolutely. And listen, not
Mhm.
only, and
Yeah.
listen inside of ourselves. And so that when you're there, people know
Yeah.
and feel and sense that you're really you have integrity, that you're showing up in a way that is, that speaks truth and
Mhm.
is well grounded. And, you talk a lot. We had wonderful conversation, and so there are two things. Is one thing is about
Mhm.
focusing on the root, and that there's so much now about the
Mhm.
fast fix. Like, let's get the fast fix. And
Yep.
sometimes you need the fast fix to get through a certain point in time, right? But then you need to get to what you call the root, going to the core. And can you just speak a little
Yeah.
bit about that? I think that's so important, especially in the time of like fast, like let's
Yeah. I
just
think the
move
fast fix
on.
can come when you figure out what it is that is the core. Does that make sense? Right. So it's a little bit
Yes,
backwards, right? Like I
yes,
used to focus on like I used to be reactionary and maybe more reactionary, and maybe that's what we talk about when we talk about the fast fix is like how do we react, and are we just reacting to things and not really thinking deeply about why we react the way we react, right? And to me, it's much more
yes,
interesting personally to figure out why I react the way that I do. And that is what I mean by going to the core. And it's, did I react this way because of something that's happened in my life? Or did I react this way because of something that I need? Or did I react this way because, I'm not? So, what is it that made me react this way? And how do I integrate that? Or how do I work on that thing so that when I react again, that perhaps I do something different, or perhaps I focus on something different. And so the core to me is always the driver of my actions. And that's what I mean when I talk about going to the core or going to the root.
So what we're talking about here is that first,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of talk about authenticity and being authentic, and authenticity is really very important. And authenticity
Right.
has to start with you, that you
Oh, yes.
feel authentic with yourself. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning point. And that starts with, as you very well say, that starts with awareness. Is like you
Mm-hmm.
cannot change what you're not aware of. So once you have awareness, once you do the work, and as you said, like going to the
Mm-hmm.
root, going to the core, when you've got that figured out,
So
the other
much
pieces
faster.
go
It's so
much
much more
quicker.
efficient, right? And I think that's a journey, right? I actually think that that's a real, like, that's a practice in and of itself. It's like meditation, it's like yoga, it's like whatever your practice may be, that too is a practice, right? Is like working on the introspective parts of your life. And the more introspective I am, the more capable I am of helping other people build their businesses, the more capable I am of helping my friends, in times of crisis or times of need, the more capable I am of connecting with people on a meaningful level quickly. I think that that's a practice that I embody, like other people embody their own practices, but that one's mine, is like really seeking to understand what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. And it sounds so like maybe it's heady, maybe that's, not what everybody does, but I think it's important to me. It's important to my journey.
Well, the other piece of it is that when you
Mm-hmm.
do the internal work, right, it
Always.
comes out on the external.
Always.
It's not, thank you, right? It's not that you're doing it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
important in that you do it for yourself, but that don't get
Right.
confused that that's where it stays. What you do
Yes.
internally gets communicated externally, and that's part of where your
Mm-hmm.
power is. So that there's truth when you speak, or when you
I
don't
don't
know something,
know
there's
that.
the truth of,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but I can
Yeah.
find
Well,
out.
having the power just to say I don't know is, yeah. 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 I'm
Huge.
fallible. Aren't we all?
Well, but well, not just Sarah, but that when you say I don't know, it doesn't mean like I don't know forever.
Yeah.
It means I don't know right now, and but and
people's
I
BS
can
meters
find
stop
out
going off,
whether
right?
I
People
find
stop
out.
thinking, well, this is a really incongruent story, or there's something off
Yes,
here, there's something that doesn't make sense, right? It's like
yes,
congruency in conversation is really important, and that's what you feel when you talk with people and your little like meter is going off and you're like, well, is this congruent with what they look like, or is this congruent with what they're saying, or is this congruent with what they've done, or you're trying to put the pieces together as quickly as you can. I don't know is a great way to invite somebody in to help you. It's a great way to invite somebody in to be closer to you. It's a great way to just say, look, I'm super curious about that, tell me more, right? Like there are lots of ways to say I don't know,
mhm.
that don't weaken you or weaken your position.
I think
Mm-hmm.
very much to the contrary. When you're able to say, I don't know, that people know that when you're saying something, you
Yeah.
really are talking
Yeah.
from the space of knowledge because you're creating your own reference point. So I would be remiss. I do have to ask you that your handle on
Yes.
Instagram is Colvinator. And how is it that you got,
Thanks.
it's wonderful. So how is it
It's
that you
funny. It was
got
a
this
joke
this
between me and my
handle?
friends years ago, high school, and that if there was ever something that somebody needed or something that somebody like, there's a problem, they would always come to me and they'd say, "Can you? You're my friend, and I love to talk to you, but right now, can you just culminate this for me?" And it was always, "Can you tell me how to solve this problem? Can you tell me what it is that I need to be thinking about? Can you jump in here and like I can't get something done and I need a hand." And that became the thing, and it was like this running joke. It was like, "Oh, she's the Colvinator. She'll figure it out. She'll get it done. Like leave it with Sarah and the answer will come." And whether that was like, fixing somebody's parking ticket for them, or like going and like, going to battle with somebody who maybe had a problem with a government agency, or, doing any of those things, it was always like, "Can you go and fix this for me? Or can you tell me how to do this?" And I see very clearly the process in fixing problems. And so it just, sometimes that's not people's natural skills, but for me, that's a very natural skill. And it's like, oh, I see the path forward. So let's just like knock it out. So that's why
Mhm.
I'm the Colvinator, is that
Yes,
I culminate things.
yeah.
It's a little silly, but I think it's apropos.
I don't think it's silly. I think it really speaks to and reflects how
Mm-hmm.
people experience you, who you are for others, and the level of respect and confidence that people have in you. So I hear it differently. And just as an aside, just to kind of highlight for our community who's watching, that it starts with you and putting yourself into spaces of realizing that I'm an opera singer and I need to also kind of have this another financial component of my life, and putting yourself out there and then honing that. And one of the things I talk about is like, and I tell people, do not
Mm-hmm.
say fake it till you make it.
Yeah,
Say
that's a
hone
great
it
way
till
to
you
say that.
own it.
Mm-hmm.
And you needed hone it till you own it. You're not faking,
Yep.
you're in the process of learning. And there is nothing wrong with learning.
Ever.
You never feel shame
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
learning.
That's a really
Really
important point.
important. Learning is an ongoing process. And you have really, in our time here together, you have really exemplified what learning looks like, what wanting to learn, being committed to learning looks like, and being able to say, as you beautifully say, I don't
Yep.
know,
Yet.
but it's not like I don't know, I
Yes.
don't
I
know
love the word
yet.
yet.
Let me get back to you. Love it, love it, love it. So, last question for now is, so Sarah, in this extraordinary journey, thank you so much. You've not only shared from your head, you've really shared from your heart, and we can't be more grateful to you than that, seriously. And so what is it that is your
Mm.
next disruption?
I'm excited that that I am a partner in, and I'm working with a really incredible company right now in the world of cybersecurity, network security. It's not at all where I thought that I would be, but I'm building something really extraordinary with a really extraordinary woman, and I love women in business just all around. I think that it's super fun to see women succeed, especially in technology. But we are cooking up something that's really disruptive, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Could you tell
Yes,
us
of
the
course.
tagline,
Yeah.
if you're
So
comfortable? Tell the tagline of the company.
a company that that believes that, you know, it's a zero trust kind of cybersecurity company that believes in the importance of connecting the world through digital means. And so when we do that, of course, we introduce risk on our networks that, you know, could potentially have negative ramifications. And so what we talk about is that we're protecting humanity in our digital world. And that's the tagline. And it's that we are allowing people to connect the way that the world is meant to connect, but that we are working really hard on the back end to make sure that, you know, bad things don't happen when we do that.
So I'm happy to say thank you for your service, because something that's so important, that we have a sense of safety, that we have a sense of security, that there are places and bases that we can go to and have a certain level of expectation, and having that expectation be met. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you so much for taking the leap. I want everyone in your heart, in your head, if you want to find the emoji for this, give Sarah a big round of applause. She has been a disruptor for herself today in having her first Instagram Live with me. I couldn't be more honored. And thank you all so much for coming in and being with us for another episode of Disruptive Conversations with Dr. RISA RYGER. Can't wait to see you next time. Let your friends know. Follow me if you haven't yet. I'm always putting out information that's helpful, that's useful, and I'd love for you to have it. And so Sarah and I are going to take our moment, our photo moment, so that we can post beautifully, and you'll get to a chance to rehear, because Sarah's words really warrant re-listening. And so your time you haven't missed it. You can come back and listen again and let people know. So Sarah, are you ready? Should we do a hair flip?
Right?
Should we do a little hair flip? Okay. Oh, you're my person.
Ready.
Okay. Okay. So we're ready. One more. Thank you all so much. See you next time.
RYGER.